And the fact that the goal was so magnificent, the fact that we had nothing to complain about, no sense of being wronged, made it feel all the worse.
How unfair. There was nothing wrong with it.
There's nothing you can howl at the moon.
I
There's
know.
no but the VAR.
From the Men in Blazers studios in the crap part of Bedford, from the crap part of West Hollywood, California, it's the Men in Blazers video podcast presented by the GFOPs at Camarena, the most awarded tequila.
Oh, we back like Sam Altman. Oh, but even more deadly to the future of humanity. What a weekend of football to be truly thankful for.
Yeah.
How are you holding up, David?
Well, was that not an AI-generated weekend of football, Rog? Are the script writers just robots? Or are robots the script writers? We have no idea.
And even if we did, how would we ever be sure? I honestly do not know. But God bless to all joining us. No doubt with bellies full after Thanksgivings of wonder. Oh, I'm sure you all agree. Everybody, to a human being, family time is the greatest time. But also, thank God for football. And before we dive into all of it, we do need to address the giant. Oh, why do we have to talk about these things? Why can't we just talk about the football? I do resent that, Davo. But we've got to talk about the 10-point deduction.
Yeah, I'm interested. I was going to say I'm interested to hear what you think about it, but I think
it's great.
I've read volumes from it. By the way, let me start right there. The second I heard about it, the first thing I thought is there cannot be a better thing to happen to Everton Football Club. Their fans feeling of like everyone's against us, the idea of defiance as we will show them they're all a bunch of corrupt cheats, and especially this season with how many other not so great teams there are at the bottom of the Premier League, if you're going to get a deduction to inspire you to even greater glory with a them against us mentality, this wasn't bad. I'm not saying it's a good thing, but it was one of my thoughts.
I wanted more points off. Why just Everton against the world? Turn it up. Yeah. Turn it up. If you don't know what we're talking about, let me just give you the very quick background. Yes, during the international break, a 10-point deduction handed out to dear, beautiful Everton. What do we say to the god of death? We might say today, for breaches of profit and sustainability rules, largest of the 3 ever such punishments, point deductions to take place in Premier League history. Champions of point deductions. You'll never sing that. To put it into American terms, we asked Americans, our American GFPs, what is that like? And the number of you, including at Czech M8S1, said it's like the NCAA death penalty, used only once against Southern Methodist University, banning the school from competing in the sport for a year, I think in the 80s, which destroyed SMU football for over a decade. Everton Methodist University got a nice ring to it. On one level, look, Everton were found guilty of one charge. English top-flight clubs are permitted to lose $132 million over 3 years, and an independent commission found Everton's losses from 2021 to 22 amounted to $157 million, which is 25 milli over the limit. But it is the startlingly enormous, the frankly unprecedented punishment, the 10 points, which makes no sense. And I've got to say, from an optics perspective, in context, there's a politically challenging moment for the Premier League. The British government has been slowly but ever louder been making noises about establishing a football regulator to oversee football in the nation out of national interest, something the Premier League hates, as it will diminish its independence and freedom. So many believe the Premier League has acted here so strongly, so publicly, calling for an enormous punishment against pretty helpless Everton to prove that it can self-govern. Who needs a regulator? We've got it, lads. Who watches a watchman? But the size of the punishment, David, 10 points, the unprecedented nature. Yes, the fact that Manchester City currently have 115 charges to face. And remember, Everton's 10 points just for one charge, and that Chelsea too now have sizable financial misdemeanors uncovered during the Roman Abramovich era. What do you make of it all, this complex web, none of which is why we all started watching football in the first place?
So, first of all, I can't believe that Everton have only lost 157 million, and I think they deserve some credit for that. I mean, round
We
of
tried
applause.
harder.
I mean, that's amazing.
We did try harder.
No one would take your money.
By the way, a lot of that was, I think, about at least 25 million. Mashiri just decided to put it in a trash can and set it on fire. That's the irony of all of this. If he just stopped actually literally burning cash, we'd probably be okay. But go on.
No, I completely agree. Optically, by punishing Everton first before they've sorted out what they're going to do with Man City and Chelsea, I think that wasn't a great look. I think this may look a little bit different after we see the punishments handed to Man City and Chelsea. I think it's going to take some time.
Will we see them though?
I think we will. Man City are fighting it tooth and nail with every lawyer that the oil money will buy them. Chelsea, I think, also have some lawyers working on it, but they have, as has been widely reported, as has been said to both of us personally, they have self-reported a lot of those misdemeanors on seeing the books after Todd Burley took over the team and Clearlake took over the team from Roman Abramovich.
When you buy Chelsea, you buy them based on having looked at the books, and when you buy and then sign, they say, and now
here are the books,
the actual books.
Yeah. So Chelsea have self-reported, already admitted guilt, and I think that if you see relegation, because that's the only thing, or because if you take away 50 points, you may as well relegate Chelsea today. I think once you see relegation for those two teams, which I think is very likely, then it might look different. But if that doesn't happen, not only optically does this look bad, it just seems awful, because what this is set up, Rog, which I'm sure you're going to get to, for Everton, is as bad as the 10-point deduction is, which I do think that Everton will recover from. It's the civil suits that are going to be coming from from Leeds United and from Leicester, and maybe Burnley as well.
I think Columbus Crew have launched one. Like everyone's getting in there. Why wouldn't you? Yeah. Chivas USA are like, we would not have gone bankrupt if Everton hadn't, God, all of this, again, I will repeat, it's not why we watch football. We're not like, oh yes, Everton have mounted an appeal. So the league this league, by the way, is now in complete uncertainty. Are Everton second from the bottom? Or are they the lower mid-table 9 points clear team that there would be if the appeal's successful? Or will it come somewhere in the middle? What precedent now, as you say, both for City and for the clubs who are lining up to sue Everton very quickly? Leeds United, Leicester City, Burnley, potentially Southampton, for loss of earnings due to Everton staying up at their expense. By the way, is this the future of sports? And I think the answer is probably yes. There you go. Where we stop watching football and it's just like everyone's mounting court cases against everybody. I mean, like if City are found guilty eventually, do Liverpool then sue them for loss of earnings due to not winning the title in 2000? In 2019, was it? Are we all just going to end up cheering for super lawyers representing our teams in courtrooms? Will the lawyers wear the colours of our teams on their wigs? Coloured wigs, Dave. Yeah. Are they like our new signings?
Highest legal fees in Europe. You'll never sing that. That's what it'll be.
Yeah. They'll be like, objection! Overruled. VAR comes in for the objection. It'll be amazing. Just like we were just watching courtroom bullcrap now. I mean, there is a feeling from people close to Everton that the 10 points will come down on appeal. And I do think the smallness of Everton's offence is pretty galling, that 25 million. And the fact that the club cooperated. Apparently, its defence of its case was fairly naive and unsophisticated with the investigation. It seemed to get them no mercy at all. If you are Manchester City, are they quaking at the proportionate punishment that they could get, or are they just laughing, knowing that Everton have no nation state backing, no oil-backed government to, and this has happened, to call British embassies and complain? And make this a geopolitical government issue, the Manchester City 115 charges.
It's very easy to answer that question. If you imagine Man City or Chelsea going down, would it be terminal to the operations? Would it be potentially terminal to the operations of those clubs? It would be tough, but it wouldn't be terminal to those operations. There's so much money behind both clubs. Whereas for Everton, even if they don't go down, let's say just on appeal, it's reduced to 8 points or reduced to 6 points. I think the maximum was 12. Let's say it could go to 6 or 8. but they are still civilly sued because they've been found guilty of a charge by
all those clubs.
Yes, then it could be terminal. It could be terminal. Already, you're being bought by, allegedly an ambulance chaser. To go and
I'd bite your arm off for an ambulance chaser.
Just an ambulance.
It's so much worse.
Yeah.
It's so much worse. So, I get to that and saying, I think your question, what if for Everton is fascinating. What if for the Premier League? I mean, first of all, I think the big question that we don't know the answer to is, can the Premier League prosecute state-owned and oligarch clubs? Can they do City? Can they do Chelsea with their vast lawyers just stalling everything? And as they stall, that means with the two clubs, 12 of the last 19 titles are under scrutiny. Ultimately, question 2 is, can the Premier League actually start to speak? This is one thing I can't understand, how silent the Premier League's been in all of this. The explanation, the sense of process, giving any sense of time frame, for instance, on the City case or on anything really. I think that's what's really missing at the moment. Essentially,
completely agree.
A comm strategy,
I completely
David.
agree. And I do think that the Premier League should have rules. And I think if you breach the rules, there should be consequences. And I would much rather the Premier League is officiating that rather than the government. That won't surprise you, long-time listeners of the pod, that I would like the government not to be involved in the adjudication of the Premier League. And if you know anything about Her Majesty's government, you will know that they don't make very good decisions when it comes to, adjudicating things, especially when it's to do with nation states who they have arms deals with. It's not going to be a great situation. But you therefore, especially when the whole world and certainly the whole of Liverpool is looking at you, or the blue side of Liverpool is looking at you, you better make sure that you appear to be, communicative, clear, equitable, and just in what you're deciding. And I think that's where there's been a failure.
Yeah, and also this is happening at a time when the Premier League teams themselves seem to be utterly fractured as to the future direction of the league. You saw that last week with just the stalled decision-making over whether players who play for teams in multi-team networks can be loaned in between those teams. Can Newcastle, for instance, just take loans in January from a number of Saudi teams? And the fact that the Super League teams that left briefly in a move that would have utterly destroyed the Premier League were merely given small cash punishment, slaps on the wrist, and quietly let back in. Ultimately, we're in a moment where power is everything in football. And as a result, fairness, equity is not. That's the reality. And it seems to undermine the very spirit, the essence of the competitive nature, which is meant to be at the heart of the thing we love. Gary Neville, the British pundit, very roughly, the equivalent of the Charles Barkley of England, he said, the trust and faith has gone completely. The greed and selflessness is out of control. It's lawless. The Premier League is a defunct organisation. I'd be furious if I was an Everton fan. I'd feel like it's an absolute disgrace, what you've done to my club. But I will say, to answer your question about Everton fans, this, Davo, just feels like one dark nightmare in a series of them for our dead club. This is just one swamp of darknesses, or is it darkness side, the plural? I don't know. Our schedule is the most brutal of the bottom dwellers for the next quarter of the campaign. All but one of Everton's remaining games before the halfway point of the season are against teams in the top half. Even if we survive, the ownership, 777, as you say, are no knights rushing to our rescue. They are a Ponzi scheme coming to pick over the bones of our dead carcass. And it's that reality which terrifies me as much as anything. They're not the frying pan. They are the fire. Bite your arm off for the frying pan. By the way, I was at the Manchester City game on Saturday when Everton fans paid for a light plane to buzz the stadium with a banner saying that the Premier League is corrupt. And people kept pinging me, asking me, can you see the plane? Can you see the plane above the stadium? And the truth is, Davo, it made a lot of noise. You could hear the buzz for like the whole first half, but no one could see it, which was like the most painful metaphor for my club.
Yeah, it's not easy. Maybe it was loud, but didn't reach a lot of altitude. Or fact is that the sky is so close to the ground up north, there is no way it could get below the clouds and above the stadium. Yeah, no, look, I've been feeling for you on this whole thing, Rog, and it's bad. I would say, as I've said before, that I now know that many pundits jump in and they complain about the government, or they complain about the the greed in football. They complain about the big clubs. They complain about everything. But all of us are sort of guilty because we've watched the Premier League over the last, 20 odd years spend money like there's no tomorrow. And we get excited for that next transfer. We get excited for that next deal. We get excited for the hundreds of millions of dollars, the billions of dollars of revenue and all these things. And of course, the consequence of all that money, the consequence of those sign whoever it is now, announce now, is that you get all of this. It's where it comes from. It is, and the vast amount of money it now costs to announce blank now means that you've ended up in this situation. And I don't know how you ever roll it back. I don't know how we ever get back to the days of, Preston North End and Accrington Stanley. I just don't think we're going there, Rog.
The only way I can think of, Davo, to roll it back is just by law to start to make every single Premier League player at halftime in the locker room smoke a cigarette, eat a pie, and drain a pint of lager like they used to when we were kids.
Yeah, but who's going to pay for that? Okay, Rog, let's get to the actual football. A quick shout out for everything happening at Men in Blazers World Headquarters this week. We're slamming right back into club football head on with a full slate of European football this week. And with it comes the return of European Nights with you and the New York Times' Rory Smith. This week, you're talking the new crop of Barcelona talent, and if perhaps there is an over-reliance on the youngsters, and also that talent-rich region of the Basque country and what it has done for Real Sociedad. A big week of European football ahead, Roger.
Yeah, my pronunciations. Come for the football. Stick around for my
Basque.
Sociedad pronunciation.
Stick around for the Basque.
One quick note. After Wednesday's games, I'll be doing it live on our new home of Do It Live, which is YouTube Live. I honestly love these broadcasts. This is the greatest platform for doing what we want to do, which is to create a place for you, dear listeners, to come up, join us on stage, ask your questions live. It has been, and it will increasingly be just an ebullient joy to commune with you about the biggest stories in football minutes after the biggest games finish. Subscribe to our YouTube, as so many of you have been doing in large numbers. Come and be with us. Make sure that you never miss an episode.
Okay, wonderful, Rog. Well, can we get a toast to kick us off?
I want to raise my first Bud Light of the day to the memory of a legendary English football manager, the late, great Terry Venables, the big charisma, big football brain, passed away at the weekend, aged 80. Venables, all of this was before so many Americans started to watch, but we all have so much to thank this man for. He played for Tottenham, managed them, amongst others, led England to a darling run into the Euro semi-finals in 1996. Just a life-changing tournament played on home turf to delirious scenes that changed really the very culture of football as we know it in England. Almost the watershed that separates the hooligan days from the Premier League global razzle-dazzle that was to come. Also changing English football tactically from long ball, huff and puff endeavour to, thanks to him, a tactically savvy, deft buccaneering game of pomp and wonder. Much of it was down to the big character, big-hearted, flamboyant wonder that was the man, named El Tel after he led Barcelona to the La Liga title. But Venables was far more than a manager. He was really a force of nature, TV crime writer, singer, yes, bar owner, novelist, England boss. He was everything. An indomitable English spirit, a bigger-than-life character. Closest American sporting equivalents I can think of, really, if Pat Riley and Bill Parcells had an Essex baby. And the greatest thing he did was that he made England believe in itself for the first time since 1966, which is borderline alchemy. I'll finish with a letter he wrote to the England squad before the Euro 2020 final. Football, he said, is just like life. You have to give it to your best shot, take the best, and survive the rest. What we'll never see his like again, David.
Amazing. Played 202 games for Chelsea, Rog, before he even went to Tottenham. Played for Queen's Park Rangers. Played for Palace at the end of his career. Amazing player. Saw him play a couple of times. I was marveling this weekend, and this is sort of apropos of our conversation we had earlier, at the image that Chelsea Football Club put out on their Instagram, and just that beautiful strip of all blue, the white Adidas tri-stripe original football boots, no shirt sponsorships, just just playing on a field, basically. You couldn't call that a pitch, and hedges all around, and just the purity of the game back then. The old black and white checkered football. What a great player, a great servant of the game everywhere, and just a real character, as you said. Okay, Rog, to the football. Man City won, Liverpool won. What has become the biggest game of the modern Premier League era? Less a football match, more a clash of civilizations. And it lit the fuse on this weekend of football after some nervy moments at both ends. In the 27th minute, Alisson miskicked a punt to shallow right field, allowing City to ram it right back down Liverpool throats. And who landed the punch? None other than that Norse deity, Erling Haaland. His 50th Manchester City goal in 48 league games. That's staggering. And as the game progressed, it looked like City might close out a 1-0 win. But then the Scouser in that team, Trent Alexander-Arnold, popped up atop the box, slotting one past Ederson before shushing the Etihad crowd. And so this footballing heavyweight title bout ends honours even. And you were there, Rog.
Yes, with the one question that everyone had on their lips. Could Liverpool mount a serious challenge for the title? That's what we're all saying. Saturday lunchtime, as we sped up the M62 to pay witness. Would Liverpool go top with a win? At a place where they'd won just twice since Klopp had taken over at Liverpool in 2015. My taxi driver just kept saying, Kloppy will have done his homework. We'll be all right. I took my brother Nigel, just both cracking up in about a Kloppy. I took Nigel, the red, as you all know, to the game as a thank you for all he's done for my dad over the past 3 months. And I posted a bunch of photos on our Insta story. The older we get, the more Nigel and I actually look like twins. I think one of my favourite responses was at Snick Pipe who said, Nigel looks just like a version of Rog who smiles and is happy inside. How well our GFOPs know us,
that's
David?
Pretty accurate. Having met Nigel a few times, that is pretty much the difference. Smiling and happiness.
And it's the Liverpool thing. It's the Liverpool thing which has brought him that joy. That is the only bloody difference between us. Nigel chose as a youth to just get rid of the 3 generations of blue blood that runs through our veins. Decide, you know what? Why would I do that to myself? Came a red, the season ticket holder, and he was alongside me to watch Manchester City, who had won 23 straight home games. One more would tie the record set by Sunderland in 1892. That is the ether that this city are in. And the Etihad is a very funny place. It's a fantastic stadium. It fills up very late, but then it's just suddenly smack full. And around me, it was really beautiful, to be candid. Full, there's lots of jokes about Man City, no fans and all that stuff. I sat with, as far as I could see, just multi-generational Manchester families, a lot of granddads taking their own offspring and their kids' to the game in large family groups. And that energy, come Blue Moon before kickoff, despite the early hour, was beers deep. And it stayed that way in the early exchanges. Liverpool honestly just looked smaller than their opponent. City spared, Liverpool scurried, trying to anxiously knock a ball through their opponent's final third. But Rodri and Akanji just delighted in stepping up, intercepting. A cumbersome with his feet. Alisson turned the ball over and over in his final third. Liverpool honestly looked like a team willing to create more risk inside their own box and in their opponents. City flinging that ball out to the flank on one, Foden, and then Chaos Agent Doku, both taking it in turns to stretch reds. David Doku, I can hear you making Doku noises.
I know.
He's the most un-Guardiola player. He's like just a street balling dribbler, doesn't always trap back, but can just unleash chaos.
You feel like he could, in this game, he could have beaten number 66, Trent Alexander-Arnold, every single time he got the ball and took him on. And he could beat Trent. He could beat Trent with help from one player. He could beat Trent with help from 2 players. You could almost feel the City bench yelling at him, stop passing the ball back, just go at them time and time and time again, which he did in the second half. But it was sort of what makes the end of this game so remarkable, and the goal that Trent Alexander-Arnold ended up scoring was how miserable Doku made him for the entire game. Phenomenal.
It was incredible. Doku is the kind of player I would bet if we stopped the game and asked him, what are you thinking now as he's on the ball? He'd say, I have no idea, so my opponent doesn't either. I mean, it was just absolute mania every time they fed him relentlessly. Just the creaking was audible before City scored. But that opening goal, it was a self-inflicted wound, Davo. Oh, poor Alisson.
Yeah, Alisson went to clear the ball. He sort of I suppose that's it's a slice. It just goes straight. The contact goes off the outside of the boot, slices up in the air, and amazing, amazing. Then it was Nathan Ake of all players who beat three Liverpool defenders and put that ball just on a dime to Erling Haaland, exactly who you want in that moment, who put it past Alisson. 1-0 and highly deserved.
My God, poor Alisson. I actually lost his footing, I think. I think it was an ass to turf tumble and that ball just skied right upwards. But God bless, that is City. Whoever it drops to has the confidence, the capacity, and, from Pep, the green light to just take on all comers, charge through, just skip past Trent Alexander-Arnold, slipped a ball between Haaland. This run, he just neutralised both panic centre-backs, Q Glory and Relief and History. His 50th goal in the Premier League. No man reached that quicker than his mere 48 games.
It's
48
insane.
bloody games. I mean, that's it. We always laugh at the Bundesliga bonus. And where's your Premier League bonus? By the way, the closest ever, United's former tyro, Andy Cole, 65 games.
And Andy
65.
Cole, who every time you check the scores, Andy Cole had scored 4. And so it's amazing
on a bad day.
Think about how many goals Andy Cole scored. And he's the closest, but he's not that close. And it was just amazing.
Everything about Haaland should never be normalised. It is utterly, utterly superlative. City on another level. Bernardo Silva looks like an elite hacker doing work on the dark web, and his football is similarly sublime. For City to lose Mahrez and Gundogan in one window and not miss a beat is really testament to his silk. Second half, Liverpool tried to force their way back into it. They pressed with more intensity. They hemmed City in. Klopp, who'd stood rock still for the first 45 minutes, now just as theatrically animated as Pep in his own box. The two of them just side by side, trapped in glass coaching cases of emotion. City failed to take the best chances. This is important. Alvarez, fed by Doku, slapped uncharacteristically high and wide like some kind of Argentine Matt Gay. Reprieve for Liverpool. Honestly, City should have been 3 up, 68th minute, a City corner, some slot. Ruben Dias tapped home, but the goal was varred off for a push on Alisson by Akanji. Bit soft, David. We'd see Joe Linton shove Arsenal aside for that Newcastle Arsenal controversial winner. Do you think goalkeepers, there's one rule for pushing a defender, one for pushing a goalkeeper?
Yeah, I mean, had the referee not called that, there's no way that would have been overturned by VAR. It was just the VAR couldn't overturn the referee's decision. But that was, when we've seen what goalkeepers deal with almost every single cross into the area, with every single corner kick, I couldn't believe that was given.
And what was surprising to me, being there, was that there was so little outcry in the Etihad as it was ruled off. There's a lot of talk about City Stadium being so quiet, but I realised actually being there and watching this, when you watch a team as good as yours win so much, it's almost as if the game as a spectacle loses its suspense because just victory, ultimate victory, just feels inevitable. It's very eerie, particularly as an Everton fan. It's like thinking about eating too much great chocolate. The taste of wonder, Davo, it starts to feel normal, almost loses its thrill.
Yeah, and also I think that when you're very successful, a lot of the people who fill the seats in the stadium are not the hardcore fans. When you're unsuccessful, the only people who want to go are the hardcore. And so it just is a very different fan experience. I felt it at Stamford Bridge as well, hugely. But I think, yeah, you've got a point. And when you go to, but it also speaks to how different the atmosphere is and how different the fans genuinely behave at every single Premier League stadium. It's just a different experience.
Then, 80th minute, 1 second, I was noting with admiration that City had been able to make Liverpool's vaunted front three look honestly so limited, so one-dimensional. Then Doku God bless, cut down the flank, fling a ball to Haaland. The Haaland who we know as the ultimate agent of death. Alisson gratefully somehow slapped the executioner's blade away. And Liverpool immediately just charged back up the field, knowing, City, we knew this, without John Stones stepping into that defensive midfield supreme role, have a lack of control in games. By the way, when I say lack of control, it's a tiny lack of control. It's so slight by normal team standards. But for them, the fact that it exists, as Chelsea showed in scoring 4, is something that must be giving Pep just an ultimate agita. And God, the save, Liverpool charged downfield. Salah pounced on the edge of the area, held that ball up. Beautiful decoy run from Gakpo, creating a sliver of space for Trent to take possession. And then, as you say, it was almost redemption. Pass it clinically, ruthlessly into the City net. A stunning moment. Trent's first of the season. Silence the ether. Just GOP Colin Steele said, that Trent is now ahead of Crumb in the great Trent rankings. And then Trent ran towards the City fans and just gave them the shush, which many Liverpool fans thought was a gesture as useless for City fans as telling a dead dog to sit, which is a bit cruel, David.
Yeah, it was bold what he did. But yeah, it was an amazing moment for him, an amazing redemptive moment, as you said, with, how many problems he had all day against Doku, but to still, have that not only concentration, to have that self-belief, to have that confidence. And, as good as the goal strike was, it was that piece of control with that first touch and how he made himself very similar to the Ollie Watkins goal for Villa against Tottenham, that winner. But it was just those quick feet. Wow, a very different kind of Trent Alexander-Arnold goal, but one that's delightful to see.
Liverpool fans behind the goal just delirious, including Luis Diaz's father, who was sitting in their midst, which is a delicious story in its own right. Pep tried to whip up the noise in the Etihad to match them, slapping the back of his bald head repeatedly, which was some move, and his team responded. They came alive down the stretch. You actually wondered why they hadn't done it all game. Um, no doubt for City, so much winning done, so much winning to come. But on this day, an odd finish. Both teams almost seem more fussed about the point rather than all three. Real fight came in that post game with Darwin beefing with Pep. I don't know how you say, you don't know where I'm from, dog, in Uruguayan, but it seemed to be a bit like that. But City finally failed to win at home for the first time since 2023. Do merchants will now point out City have won 2 points out of the last 6. But unlike the Chelsea game, which came from an inability to contain Chelsea's chaos, this was more, it seemed to me, David, that they just kind of hit snooze. Couldn't be bothered to win a game that was theirs for the taking. What does it mean that we still have a title race right now, other than just like, kind of, we both know City are going to put together one of their strings of 14 straight wins right after Christmas.
Yeah, we are 13/38 into the season. That's more than a third. And to me, it still feels sort of inevitable. But yeah, this was a game they had on their racket. They had right there. They felt in control of the entire game. This was a different sort of, as you mentioned, a different sort of. When City tend to implode, they tend to implode more dramatically. Leaking 4 goals against Chelsea or getting beaten by Wolves. This is sort of the sort of things that happens to mere mortals in the Premier League. When you're in control of the entire game, you have so many chances, but you end up conceding a somewhat late, very, very, very good goal. But it still doesn't make me think that City aren't going to win the whole thing.
Do Liverpool look like title contenders? That you
No.
can make the case that they didn't on this day, tactically or through their football. But there is an opinion that if they can go to City, play that poorly, that disjointedly for long spells at the Etihad, and emerge with a point, then everything's possible.
Yeah, I suppose so, but I don't think that they're not at the level of Man City and Arsenal to me. And I think Alisson looking, I mean, not just the giving up the goal. I thought Alisson looked pretty weak the entire day. And when I compare them to Man City, when I compare them to Arsenal, to me they're not quite in the same conversation.
None of this matters anyway. Football's all about what happens in the courtroom, Dave. I'm not on the football pitch.
It's either VAR or the courtroom. There's nothing else worth discussing. So sadly, we cannot delay talking about it anymore. Roger, Everton 0, Manchester United 3. Amid a maelstrom of revolution amongst the Goodison faithful over Everton's aforementioned 10-point deduction, the team itself is not able to muster quite as much fight. A third-minute instant classic from 18-year-old Alejandro Garnacho pretty much declared this one over at the outset. It did take United until the second half to find a second through a relatively soft penalty that Rash Beans converted, but Ashley Young was in the area. And former child star Anthony Marshall added a third, and so Everton sits second bottom on that pre-appeal 4 points, Rog. A lot has happened since we last podded, though.
Oh, do you hear the people singing a song of angry men? Was this not the most depressing rendition of Les Miserables ever, David?
Yeah, this was not a great advertisement for defiance.
It wasn't. Let's start with the great, wondrous part of the day, which is a Goodison Park. If you've ever been there, you'll know this. On a good day, it is a viper-filled bear pit, and I mean that in a positive way. 2 vipers.
And bears.
Sunday. Yeah, and bears, all of you. That grand old stadium, 131 years. It was the viperiest. It was the most bear pittiest that I've ever seen it. Everton fans, incredible. They're just incredible. They had raised $50,000 in this time of austerity, in this, when money is short on the ground. They put their money, where their hearts are, where they're behind what they believe. By the way, $50,000 is both 50,000 more dollars than 777 have, and also $50,000 more than the club have spent on transfers in the last year. The signs, the noise, the banners. I was actually on the flight home from Liverpool watching this game. Thank you to Virgin's very strong streaming wireless. I was able to watch the game, and we've talked before on this show about how I always tear up when I watch anything on a plane. In the name of the Father, tears. Inside Out, I'm just a bawling mess.
Everyone
but
is.
The players' entry onto that field, it just made me proper sob. Just the noise of the fans. There's something about it. It just made me ache profoundly. The love, the passion, the fear they felt, the chaos, the confusion, the sense of community, and the threat to that community in equal measure. The jobs that rely on this club in that city. For those fans, you realise in that moment, for them, Everton, we are a king. We are not a pawn, but a king who has been treated like a sacrifice. The outrage, the agony, also a sense of strange validation. The world is against us. We are Liverpudlians. We know that, but we are fighters, and we always fancy our chances. But what did the pre-match scenes feel like to you as a neutral, David?
I mean, it's I always look in wonder and it's something that supporting a London club, any London club, maybe with the exception of West Ham at times, it's impossible to really relate to and feel and only respect for how the Goodison faithful came together and raised that money and figure it out. But in some ways, at the same time, I know that it's it's like the scene at the end of The Great Escape, which we talk about all the time. In many ways, they've never been happier than all together. They'll always remember the day that they went out to play Man United, and they got the banners and they got the signs, and they were all together as a community. It's in some ways, it's the comfortable place, the them against us, the validation, as you speak of, that we really are hated by everyone and disrespected and not given a chance.
It's sometimes better to know than not to know, but let history show that we actually entered this game with a modicum of footballing hope too. We picked up 13 points in our last 7 games, but inside 3 minutes, all of that was just shattered glass. Everton had hardly touched the ball, to be honest. David Dallo floated a pass deep to the back of the box. It seemed pretty harmless as it floated across the dark night. 19-year-old Spanish-born Argentine international Alejandro Garnacho, complete. When I say he had other ideas, I mean he had ideas that were just on another transcendent human plane. So much space as the ball was played behind him. Young was just like, nah, no need to follow Young. So Garnacho, I don't know how to describe it. He was just like, let me go kung fu fighting on this one. Just with vision, with confidence, with audacity, just big air, execution, distance, the power. The fact that it was past England's number 1 too, Jordan Pickford. David, this was just one of the most incredible exclamation points in goal form.
Yeah. I wonder how many times out of 10 or even out of 100 he would make that if he tried it again. But it was just perfect. I mean, it seemed to be had a difficulty factor of, you know, almost infinity. But the height that he rose, the distance away from him the ball was from Dalot, even though I'm sure Dalot's telling everybody, I put it on a dime, I put it on a dime. And then
couldn't miss.
And
you couldn't miss with the quality of the pass, I'm sure
and
he said.
The speed with which it went in with the ball traveling away from him because arcing back from the byline. It was just an amazing finish.
God, I mean, look, to me, not the best Premier League. I think the commentators are really saying, is that the best Premier League goal ever? In terms of the best bikes, to me, Wayne Rooney still has the most context and the historical context. It was the goal that made America fall in love with the Premier League. Gareth Bale's in the Champions League final probably has the most consequence. Zlatan Ibrahimovic against England, the most swagger. Peter Drury screamed "special beyond special," which is I've thought about a lot. It was his first goal of the season. It was a goal so stupendous. Even the goal scorer momentarily couldn't believe what he'd done. It's the kind of thing you only ever see scored against Everton. Or, Dave, I'm pretty sure we saw this on a daily basis when we walked alongside Copacabana Beach with some Brazilian called Jesus, wearing just a bulging Speedo, just doing this casually.
So true, exactly. There were grandfathers doing that on Copacabana Beach.
Yes.
But it was, I must say, immediately everybody says, oh my God, how do we compare that to Rooney's goal for Man United? They were very different. I mean, Rooney's goal, the ball was played from in front of him, which seemed to me to be harder. But just Rooney was carrying 45 extra pounds compared to Garnacho. The fact that he got himself up in the air and put it over is amazing. It defied physics. Garnacho's didn't defy physics; it respected physics. But Rooney's goal defied physics. I'd still give the quality to Rooney.
By the way, I've often thought about this idea, and we've touched upon it twice in this podcast in years past, that all of us in life, all of us, even you, dear listener, every one of us have a moment, we probably don't know it at the time, where life is never going to get any better than how it just was in that second. Some of us have it, for instance, in a great, if any of you are high school quarterbacks in just the great come from behind win against a local rival, that moment, that touchdown, that was it. Not me, I didn't have that. Others have it late in life. You don't choose when it happens, it just happens. I guess I'm asking David, do you think that was Garnacho's? And should the lad just pack up and retire now?
Well, based on some of the misses for the rest of the game that he had, where he was missing goals that were way easier. I'm not sure he'll ever score a goal like that again.
Oh my God. It was, by the way, in context, it was more than a goal. As an Everton fan, it was just like a cold water just thrown over a flame at Goodison Park. It was meant to be our day. This was meant to be Everton's day. This was the day when we showed the world our pain and our fight. And now in that moment, you realize, oh God, the only thing the world's going to see is that highlight. Yeah. That's the only clip that's going to make. Right. That gent with his archly manicured eyebrows knocking the stuffing out of a very club and half a city. And the fact that the goal was so magnificent, the fact that we had nothing to complain about, no sense of being wronged, made it feel all the worse.
How unfair. There was nothing wrong with it.
There's nothing you can howl at the moon.
I know.
No, but the VAR! I got to be honest, pain does feel so much more magnified, David, when you're in the points deduction zone.
Yeah. No, I can imagine. But you say it knocked the stuffing out of Everton, but in fact it didn't. Everton played some very good football after that.
Yeah, we did. I mean, God bless the fans. 10 minutes, they rose up to chant the Premier League corrupt as F chant. It was honestly glorious and painful to witness. As was the football. Kobe Minu, 18 years old, first Premier League start. ran the game almost like a Stockport Rodri. Stunning to watch, a kid who decides what he's going to do. And the style of David Silva before the ball even comes to him. But as you say, credit Everton. Took it on the chin, tried to unfurl that cohesive football that had seen them unbeaten in 5. There were fireworks crackling around Goodison. The fans believed. The broadcasters worked so hard to make sure that all crowd shots are out of focus or not in the depth of field. The game scrappy. United kept passing that ball to Onana, going backwards over and over, which led to Everton chance after chance. DCL glancing header. Beautiful Decore. Next, the slap one just wide. United dug in. God, it was as if they were just trying to see who could get away with the Snyder's foul without getting a card. Everton. XG in this one, David, they won it comfortably. But this is the stat that kills us. EFC Stato computed that in their 5 home defeats in the Premier League, an enormous number this season already, Everton have had 18 big chances, but converted just one of them. How did we not score, David?
Everton aren't good at converting big chances, would be my my answer
How
to
do you
that.
know that?
I don't know. I
Proof,
don't know. Everton not good at converting big chances at home, which is sort of important in football. So yeah, but Everton did play some very good football, and they had Man United scrambling, certainly before the break. After the break, it felt like Man United adjusted a little bit, and then they seemed to have a man over in midfield the whole time.
Yeah, and that man was Ashley Young, who you could say was still United's best player. I mean, any Everton fan who's watched this season must be howling at them. I mean, Martial charging into the box, looking for contact. Young offered it. Astonishing to witness. You've got to wonder how much more can young, raw, inexperienced Nathan Patterson hurt Everton more than the liability that is Ashley. I cannot stand watching this man. Rashford scored the pity penalty, fine finish, second of the season in the 13th game of the campaign. Goodison, agony, seething. To lose to a once-in-a-lifetime worldy is one thing. To lose to another self-inflicted Ashley Young wound we all saw coming is incredibly excruciating. Martial killed off the game with a delicious finish for his annual goal. Yeah, and when that gent scores against you, even the fat lady does not need to clear her throat to sing.
Like, do I need to sing? Do I need to? No, you don't.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
She's like, oh, that was Martial. Game over. Everton's worst day of the season, United's finest. And for Everton, root cause of the pain, we've lost 3 games this season in which we've had 10 more shots than our opponent, most of any team. We have Forest, Newcastle, Chelsea in the next 3. You're going down with the City, sang United fans joyously at the Blues. But United, David, we talked enough about Everton, I think, on this podcast. Too much for my taking. United, best thing you can say about them is that they are resilient. They handled a deeply hostile atmosphere like professionals. So many injuries for their squad too. A theme for this season in this crazy World Cup interrupted season. Players going down everywhere, but they've kept on rolling. City are yet to run away with the league. They have won, United now 15 points out of their last 18, which is incredible. The 3 they dropped were actually being smashed by City in the Manchester derby. How do you think of them? Because to me in this game, they still seem limited. They still seem incredibly one-dimensional. Yet they're back in the top 6. This was the biggest win of their season. They head this week to Galatasaray, trying to keep the embers of their Champions League challenge alive. And then next weekend to Newcastle, knowing that when they are challenging, they can produce flickering moments of godly football that they now still need to turn into like 90 minutes of godly football.
Yeah, I think flickering moments of godly football is pretty much how I felt about Man United for the last few seasons. This, I think, was more encouraging, and I think this run of form that they've been on, or not run of form, run of results that they've been on are a testament to this. But they're starting, beyond just flickering moments, there are starting to be sequences of play that look like classic Man United. That third goal was something extraordinary. Obviously, the game was pretty much over at that point, but it was one of those incisive, overwhelming on the wing, slick passing moves, great finish. And look, as we've said, both of us have said before about Man United, it's like a scratch record. So many good players, so many players of quality, that you look across that field, you look down that bench, and you just cannot believe the number of like stars that they have playing for them. And in the end, they're going to do you. and they're going to be there or thereabouts. I don't think they're ready to be a top 3 team, but I do think that they're going to challenge for Europe again this season, and I wouldn't want to play them right now. Okay, before we go, a quick reminder about everything we've got happening at Men in Blazers this week, powered by Bud Light. Easy to drink, easy to enjoy. It's all about the European football this week with European Nights dropping tomorrow and a very special Champions League Do It Live happening Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time on the Men in Blazers YouTube page. Subscribe to make sure you do not miss it. Rog, can we get a final toast to close us out?
Oh, I thought you'd never ask. Let's get this refreshing drink down the hatch. I want to close by raising this shot of Jägermeister to you, you incredible, nourishing, supportive, passionate community. I wrote about this in the newsletter last Friday morning. I am continuously blown away by the number of UGFOPs who've sent ravens of love and support as this time of challenge. I'm honestly embarrassed to say I've not been able to dig out and reply to the influx fully yet, but they do mean so much to me and my family. The big takeaway for me after spending a Thanksgiving with my dad, Judge Ivor, in his waking hours, or I guess the waking minutes interspersed with shutdown naps, is that at the end of the day, all that matters in life, it's not the size of the house that you live in or the cost of the car that you drive. It's really the memories that you make and that you can share. That's all you have. And I spent a lot of time reminiscing with my dad, reliving our past experiences, emptying almost the memory banks of days spent following Everton across Europe, holidays spent attempting to surf on wooden ironing boards we'd found. So in the waves off North Wales beaches, we could try and get up when I was 10. We're just listening to Simon and Garfunkel albums on a radio cassette player, old school style, while driving around the north of France. And this is the truth I've learned from this time of darkness. The most profound memories are often the simplest, the cheapest, yet the most sincerely shared and deeply meaningful. To more, big love, courage.
Yeah, Rog, blown away by the GFOPs in these moments, these non-football related moments, and thinking of you and your whole family and Val going through this all together. So glad you got to take the whole family back to Liverpool this weekend. Okay, you can
to enjoy Everton's 10-point deduction.
Yes, well, you've never been. You love a deduction. You love a deduction. How are you
going
to do next season? Well. How are you going to do next season when you don't have a deduction? I'll tell you need deductions. Deductions are what? Deductions are life.
That's why I'm so excited for 777 to take over, because I just
think about the deductions. Think about the penalties. Think about the penalties. Yeah. Okay, you can follow us on Twitter at Men in Blazers, at Embassy Davies, at Rog Bennett on Instagram, at Men in Blazers, at Embassy Davies on Facebook. We're the Men in Blazers on Twitch, twitch.tv/Men in Blazers. Also, we've got a TikTok, look for it, at Men in Blazers. You can always email us at meninblazers@gmail.com. We love and cherish, as mentioned, getting your emails. Venderpunk Rog.
War Pig.
Was that a Rabona?
I like snacks.
Balds win, Balds win.
Take that, Gloria.
Balds lose.
To Tweed.
Abrigado, rock on, mate.
Kung Fu Fight in America. Love you, Davo.
I love you, Roger.
To life. Listen to the full version of this podcast and all our podcasts wherever you get your pods. But first, subscribe here for more Men in Blazers videos and courage.